Small island developing states across the Caribbean are among the most vulnerable countries in the world. Their small size, open economies, high reliance on natural resources, and indebtedness exacerbate their risk to a changing and variable climate. In spite of these intractable challenges, the region launched a valiant response to climate change nearly 2 decades ago. Owing to the success of the first wave of climate initiatives across the region, CARICOM heads of state called for an agency dedicated to developing and managing the region's climate change response. The region's homegrown response to climate change has evolved over the last decade into the world's only regional climate change center. The Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, widely known as the 5 Cs, is a center of excellence that thrives on coordination, collaboration, and partnerships. In its first decade, the center executed the world's first pilot adaptation program in 3 countries across 5 areas. The early projects created a solid foundation for the work we do today. They boosted climate data collection and our ability to predict the region's climate in the future, capacity building, and efforts to include climate change into national development processes. Our actions have been effective because our work is grounded in a firm regional commitment, policy, and strategy. Our 3 foundation documents, the Liliendahl Declaration, the Regional Framework for Achieving Development Resilient to Climate Change, and its Implementation Plan, are the basis for climate action in the Caribbean.
Core of that framework basically is the whole question of response. How do we respond to climate risk? So a lot of it is about adaptation and about providing the knowledge base that would allow us to make the sort of decisions that we have to make if we are going to build that type of resilience.
How have we therefore advanced having these various documents in place? 1, we've been able to improve the sensitization of our policymakers that climate change cannot stay within the realm of the natural scientists. It impacts our poverty alleviation programs, it impacts our water supply, it impacts our food security, it impacts our health, and therefore there is no dichotomy between addressing climate change and addressing these other development objectives. So we have raised the consciousness, the visibility, and the importance of this issue.
Guided by this regional vision, we've successfully executed a suite of climate change-related programs over the last 5 years, worth approximately $50 million. We've done pioneering work covering regionally relevant climate modeling and data collection, adaptation projects, climate risk management, education and outreach, and coordinating Caribbean negotiating positions.
Our climate modeling and data collection work generate Caribbean-relevant information that supports effective decision-making.
All of the information we got in the region previously about what future climate will be like came from global models. These were not of much help to us because they weren't specific enough. The global models divides the world into 300 kilometer square grids, and the projections that you get are coarse, and for small island states and the small countries in the Caribbean are not specific enough for us to use in our decision-making process. So now we're using regional climate models that will take us down to as much as 8 kilometer square resolution, so we get more specific information. The modeling exercise involves a tremendous amount of computerized activities, and none of our countries on their own will be able to generate that information from the models in the time we would require. So we have approached this through a network of institutions, and of course the center at the center of these activities, coordinating the activities, making the linkages and facilitating the work and output of these institutions.
We're also improving climate risk planning, management, and action by building an integrated network of coral reef early warning system stations across the region.
Incorporating a climate risk ethic into Caribbean decision-making is essential for effective climate action. The Caribbean Climate Online Risk and Adaptation Tool, CCORAL, which was developed to integrate climate resilience into normal Caribbean decision-making processes and activities, uniquely positions the Caribbean to mount a robust response to climate change.
It's beginning to show what are the impacts delineated for us due to climate change, not lumping everything under the climate change umbrella. By doing that, a particular development project, whether it be a road being built, a bridge being reconstructed, are we imputing the climate change signature onto those? So it's not just rebuilding a bridge, it's rebuilding a bridge taking into consideration what the climate models are indicating to us.
Phase 1 saw the development through consultation with countries. So we selected 4 countries: Belize, Jamaica, Barbados, and Suriname. These were the countries we thought who had the experience and was being able to inform the development of the tool. So we had consultations with the 4 countries in developing the tool and developing a template, an online template that could be used by all persons. Phase 2 saw a further testing of the tool by involving all regional stakeholders, this time all CARIFORUM countries, which included the 14 CARICOM countries, plus the Dominican Republic and Cuba. They were exposed to the tool through 2 regional consultations, one held in Belize and another in Barbados. We sought feedback to further advance the development of the tool itself. Now we're at the stage where we're running out training through country-specific activities.
Our investments in critical adaptation projects have been pivotal in advancing our resilience-building efforts and transforming attitudes. Some of these adaptation initiatives are among the first in the world.
With climate change, we know that we are being impacted by more severe hurricanes. So by 2025, for example, we expect to have the average move from 1 to 2 a year to 3 to 4 of category 4 and 5 hurricanes. In a case like that, you would have to be able to have our buildings in such a way that they can resist and they can withstand that kind of wind pressure, that kind of force. So this project looked at the International Code Council. We looked at specific wind speeds for St. Lucia. So we then looked at a building of choice and we looked at various criteria: accessibility, use of the building as an emergency shelter, and other things like that. And we came up with the Marshall Community Center. At the time, the Marshall Community Center was in quite a state.
It has demonstrated what should be done in terms of strengthening critical infrastructure. And so it is serving as a model for what should be done. For example, if you want to either retrofit or design new hurricane shelters, schools, and so on. And the engineering guidelines are available. But I think also critically, one of the areas in which it has had some influence is that of electricity. I mean, it can, during regular operations, non-emergency operations, it feeds power into the grid. But in the case of a hurricane or when there's no power, it can be adjusted, or in fact, just a flick of a switch or two makes it provide power for the building. So that was nowhere in the electricity supply.
Just in terms of it's running as a grid-tied system, that system should repay for itself within probably about 5 years. And the system, remember, has a system life of about 35 years.
The whole aim of the project was to help out the community and to ensure there's some cost-saving measures for the hotel. Since Coconut Bay uses so much water, we are probably the second largest user of water on the southern tip of the island. And we needed at least to save some so the general public, the neighboring communities could get a little bit more, because there's so much water shortages, especially during the dry spell. And Coconut Bay also would benefit in the lawns. The lawns get really brown and unsightly during the dry spells. So the whole aim was to soften that blow for the community and also for the hotel.
Further, the Point Sab Environmental Protection Area is located adjacent to Coconut Bay Beach Resort and Spa. And in the past, they had a sewage treatment system that allowed for release afterwards, as you'd appreciate. You don't necessarily want a release into the marine environment. The adjacent area is used in terms of tourism, snorkeling, for example, sea bathing, but also in terms of fishing by the fishing community. So the project also benefits the fishers and the tourism sector in this regard, because now we have the recycling of the waste.
The desalination plant is a device that takes salt water, remove the salt and the impurities, and make potable water using a variety of equipment, pumps, filters, membranes. The system is extremely efficient. I mean, the new design desalination plants come with energy recovery systems. The energy recovery system allows us to make a gallon of water for less than 1.5 cent EC.
Carriacou is an island that doesn't have any permanent rivers. So the population on the island depends solely on rainwater harvesting. Rainwater harvesting alone would not be able to sustain a serious economic development on the island of Carriacou.
It was designed to provide a reverse osmosis desalination plant that can provide at least 20 gallons of water per household for at least 1,000 households on the island. And with an energy component which was originally should have been a windmill, a wind turbine. But because of the sensitive nature of our community, we made a switch towards photovoltaic.
The PV system is an excellent addition to the project. The PV system harvests sunlight to produce electricity. Sunlight is basically free, so it increases the efficiency of operating the desalination plant, because the sunlight is harvested by the PV system that goes back onto the grid, which in turn is used by the desalination plant to make potable water.
I recall in the period 2009 to 2010, we had very severe weather conditions to the point where water had to be barged in from Grenada to Carriacou and Petite Martinique. One trip of water cost in excess of $26,000, and this had been a burden. And so when the idea of the desalination reverse osmosis project was first revealed to us, we gravitated towards it and accepted it greatly, because we know it can alleviate a lot of problems that we normally experience in the dry season.
In 2011, when we started testing the plant, there was some reservations. And the reservations came largely from our seamen, because Beckway is a maritime community. And a lot of our men have been on ships, and obviously they've been drinking reverse osmosis or desalination water on the ships for many decades. And some of those ships probably have been using the older versions of desalination systems. So they came back with stories of the water does not taste very good, and it probably causes you to get diarrhea and things of that nature. But then came the serious drought of 2012, and people had nothing to turn to but the reverse osmosis water that we produce. And it became in such great demands that the entire island depended on it.
In terms of sustainability, we do not have to have a financial burden brought on by the energy required to power both desalination plants. Additionally, it means that per gallon of water produced, we can save on the end cost, on the final cost for the user or for the final spots on the distribution system. What that means is the water, while being produced sustainably and by a low carbon footprint means, will be a lot cheaper to the end user and a lot more accessible to people who are of lower income status.
We have also installed a solar photovoltaic farm to provide some of the energy needed to power saltwater reverse osmosis system and Kikaka that provides the island with clean drinking water.
The Caribbean Fish Sanctuary Partnership Initiative, or CFISH, is strengthening marine protected areas or community-based fish sanctuaries by providing resources, training, and alternative livelihood opportunities in 5 countries across the Caribbean. The £2.1 million initiative, which is supported by the United Kingdom's Department for International Development, DFID, through the Centre, is coordinated by the CaribSave Partnership. Coordinating a unified Caribbean position on climate change is one of our enduring successes. This prepares the region to effectively articulate its vulnerability and scope of action and support needed to manage our climate-induced risks.
Well, our support has come in various formats. First of all, it provides a member of staff on the negotiating team. So I joined the Belize delegation from the Centre, and so I can enter into active negotiations on behalf of CARICOM, on behalf of IOSIS, and on behalf of Belize. So there is that firm role. For the past 5 or 6 years, we have been able to convene meetings of the CARICOM climate change negotiators early in the year to bring us together to come up with a unified CARICOM position. And we then ensure that each country is supporting one aspect of the negotiations. So somebody covering finance, somebody covering technology, somebody covering greenhouse gas emissions, somebody from the region is covering one aspect of the negotiations. The next area is that we are able to develop technical papers, getting experts that are not in the process but who are specialized in a certain area of finance and loss and damage or insurance, draft up a technical paper that then becomes the basis on which we can negotiate.
Transforming attitudes and raising awareness about climate change is a key feature of our work. Since inception, the Centre has functioned as a focal point for information and data on climate change in the region. The Centre now manages the Regional Clearinghouse, which is the most extensive repository of Caribbean-specific information on climate change. This resource is widely used across the region. Guided by a cogent communication strategy, we have used new media technologies and traditional tools and techniques to engage a wide range of stakeholders. Caribbean Climate, the Centre's news hub, is the region's premier climate change-focused blog with over 42,000 unique visits in the last 12 months and approximately 2,000 email subscribers. Youth engagement is a central feature of our outreach work. We supported a youth forum on climate change aimed at high school students in Belize in 2010 and the Youth Voices for Climate Change Forum in Guyana in 2014. Through these initiatives, students were engaged about how their individual actions contribute to the broader challenge of climate change and the ways in which they can adapt amidst a changing and variable climate using a range of age-appropriate tools. Linking individual actions with the broader challenge of climate change is the guiding principle of our communications and outreach work, which we intend to scale up through greater data visualization across sectors. The Centre is also broadening its education and outreach work by crafting curricular resources designed for Caribbean children ages 12 to 16. These resources that were developed by educators in collaboration with the Centre's technical team forms a part of the Centre's thrust to embed climate change into the region's education sector, beginning in Belize. The 4-unit curriculum, The Warming Climate, Sea Level Rise, Pine Forest, and the Social Impacts of Global Warming, includes classroom face-to-face interaction, field trips, workbooks, and varied assessments, and has a total of 46 wide-ranging lessons with supporting resources and several videos.
One student reported to us after he returned the following week from classes how he tried to implement what we had told him about the conservation of water by setting a bottle of water in the tank in the bathroom, the toilet tank in the bathroom. And his mother wanted to know what was going on, and he tried to explain all about conservation of water and the low level of the water in terms of the amount that would be used each time we had a flush if we just put a weight in the tank.
The best part was in the end when we went to San Pedro and we looked at the mangroves and look at the corals underwater and see what would get damaged if climate change would continue. All the beautiful mangroves and corals would be non-existent.
The success of these climate change youth programs underscores the need to institutionalize the Centre's youth engagement in the region. So we are building a network of school-based environmental clubs with a strong climate change focus in secondary schools across the Caribbean. Our work is sustained through meaningful relationships with complementary regional and international organizations, our development partners, the governments of the region, and the communities we work in.
Partnership is the way to success. And therefore, without partners, we would not have been in a position to do the things we want. So the first thing we went out to do was to find partners and demonstrate to them why it was necessary for them to support us. And I must say that we have been extremely successful in that sense, because we have had support from various governments, starting with the government of Italy back in 2004, the government of the Hellenic Republic of Greece, the government of Australia, in terms of direct support to the center.
The partnership between the government of Grenada and the 5 Cs, I would say, is a very great partnership. A partnership that has deliverables, tangible deliverables, and a partnership that keeps us in the loop. And I think this is a model that the rest of the world could use.
We're a partnership success story, yet there's so much more to be done to secure our economies and livelihoods in a changing climate.
There are 3 transformations I would expect to see, and they involve energy, water, and land. We in the Caribbean region, apart from Trinidad, and maybe to a lesser extent Suriname, are net importers of fossil fuel. Some of us are spending as much as 40 to 50% of our export earnings on importing fossil into the region. Climate change is forcing us to re-examine that matrix. So we are working to start moving more towards renewable energy, or what we may call a low carbon development pathway. Water security and water management remain critical for us. Why? 8 of the 18 most water scarce countries are found in the Caribbean, according to the World Resources Institute's publication of 2013. It therefore behoves us to concentrate more importantly, not just on water production, but on water management, inclusive of the efficiency aspect, the pricing aspect, and how it is we are utilizing this resource. And last but not least, land use planning. A lot of times, climate change and other disasters, other physical phenomena are blamed for disasters in our regions. But if we are not putting in place proper land use plans, these things will continue to occur.
We're seeing a lot more discussion about the issues, but in the final analysis, again, our greatest challenge is resources.
Financing the center's operations beyond 2015 is critical to the Caribbean community. A blended approach to financial sustainability will underpin our actions. Traditional approaches that have served us well, like securing operational grants from supportive governments and revenue from project execution fees, will be complemented by 2 additional sources of income: a trust fund and investments in renewable energy pilot projects.
We are looking to have a trust in excess of $100 million.
It will act almost like a revolving fund, where the capital that is put in will remain in, and it's just the interest that is being accrued that will be utilized for programs. The idea is those monies will be used to do that seed funding, to do the research, to tell the investors, well, yes, this is a feasible option, and then to provide some matching contribution or equity towards those programs.
Fossil fuel consumption is a major driver of climate change. It costs the region $37 billion of its foreign exchange earnings and further reduces the potential for economic growth. Employing renewable forms of energy will allow us to tackle 2 big problems: climate change and economic competitiveness. develop investments in the production of biofuels using indigenous plants that do not compete with the agricultural land resources could significantly improve the region's fortunes. Tapping these renewable energy resources will be a defining feature of our next decade. We have been demonstrating the viability of producing fuel and food from naturally harvested Cahoon palm nuts and documenting its economic, social, and technological benefits under the Cahoon Palm Nut Renewable Energy Project in Flowersbank, Belize. The challenges posed by changing and variable climate are significant for our small and highly vulnerable states, but our comprehensive and regionally endorsed policy and action plans offer a credible basis for engagement that will sustain and improve meaningful action on climate change across the Caribbean. Expanding our partnership success story is vital. To learn more about climate change, visit caribbeanclimate.bz and explore the Clearinghouse, the most extensive repository of Caribbean-specific information on climate change.